Translator, Redditor, Kurisu Yan. Tianzhao let out a cold sneer. Ling Han, I'll leave that thing in your hands for now and reclaim it in the future. You still have a future? Ling Han's killing intent erupted like a blade drawn from its sheath, surging straight out. You'll die today. Ha ha, you're talking a fool's talk? Yan Tianzhao struck back, yet at once cried out in astonishment. You actually reached the 8th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier? He snorted again. There was still an immeasurable distance from the flower blossom tier. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Those who had entered the mystery realm appeared one after another. Yukun Lun, Bai Heishun, and other famed figures from the older generation's prodigy role all stepped across into the flower blossom tier. With long years of accumulation, aided by the mystery realm, they finally cleared that most arduous step. To enter the flower blossom tier was to transcend the mortal body, so each of them brimmed with confidence, their spirits soaring with an indescribable vigor. They also turned their eyes toward Ling Han. Back when the Jiang family sought a groom, they had all been defeated by Ling Han and Yan Tianzhao. Now that they had crossed into the flower blossom tier, the cards had been reshuffled. Especially Ling Han, who had not crossed into the flower blossom tier. He had no qualifications to be mentioned on equal footing with them at all. Small tower, give me a power boost, Ling Han said inwardly. Though boosting at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier would have been the most profitable, there was only one thought in his mind now, and that was to kill Yan Tianzhao, to end the karma he had sown. Hong. Ling Han's presence shot skyward, instantly breaking through into the flower blossom tier, then charging all the way up to the 8th layer of the flower blossom tier. All those flower blossom tier elites cast sidelong glances at Ling Han. What had happened? How could his tier undergo such a terrifying change in an instant? Especially Yukun Lun, who had been filled with confidence, wanting to battle Ling Han to wash away the humiliation of retreating without a fight. This was a rude awakening, and the gloom in his heart could be imagined. Yan Tianzhao's expression instinctively turned grave. Ling Han's battle prowess was far too strong, and he had experienced it before. When Yan Tianzhao had been ahead in tier, the two had still been evenly matched, but now Ling Han held the advantage in tier, and not by a little. This fight was definitely going to be hard. Die! Ling Han swung his sword, and Hong, 10 flashes of sword chi streaked forth. Yan Tianzhao retaliated. His control of power had reached the acme of perfection, able to wield 1% strength as though it were 10%. After all, he could be counted as a special type of god, and could not possibly be ordinary. Yet Ling Han was far too extraordinary. As the demon birth sword slashed down, its might was frightening, and dazzling swordlight swallowed Yan Tianzhao whole. With an absolute advantage in power piled atop everything else, Yan Tianzhao fell into a disadvantaged position. Ha ha! You only forcibly increased your power to the flower blossom tier, and aren't truly at the flower blossom tier. Yan Tianzhao was unquestionably sharp, immediately seeing through Ling Han's weak point. What was the most formidable aspect of flower blossom tier beings? They could invoke the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the surroundings to strengthen themselves, turning 1-fold of attack into 10-fold, and even 100-fold. Ling Han only possessed the power of the 8th layer of the flower blossom tier, and could not utilize the heaven and earth's spiritual chi. This was the shortcoming of his tier. However, the difference of each small tier within the flower blossom tier was a great gap in power. So the 8th layer of the flower blossom tier was enough to make up for 10 times and even 100 times the amplification of heaven and earth's spiritual chi, allowing Ling Han to still hold the advantage. However, such an advantage wasn't as obvious as the 8th layer against the 1st layer. At most, it was like the 2nd layer against the 1st layer. Yan Tianzhao was fearless, exchanging blows with Ling Han. His grasp over power was too powerful, and he soon stabilized the situation. However, faced with the sharpness of the demon birth sword, he still did not dare to parry it head-on, and remained at a disadvantage. This already made the flower blossom tier elites watching feel their jaws ache. These two people's battle prowess was at least flower blossom tier 6 stars, suppressing many veteran flower blossom tier warriors. Ling Han, you can't possibly kill me. Just stop and keep your life. When the time comes, I'll find you." Yan Tianzhao laughed loudly. By the time, he naturally meant when he crossed into the shattering void tier and gained the qualification to shatter the void to become God. When he obtained the coordinates and returned to the great Brahmas, he would be able to open the god's treasure trove discovered by Heavenly River King. There won't be a future. You must die today. Ling Han said coldly. He had been accumulating strength, and now Mysterious 3000 was ready. With a sword thrust, it began turning into 1,000 flashes of sword light. Yan Tianzhao's expression changed drastically. This strike was too powerful, and he did not dare to parry it head-on, immediately turning away to flee. Flower blossom tier creatures could fly, so he naturally rose into the sky and said, "Ling Han, just you wait." No need to wait. Ling Han sheathed his sword and formed the posture of drawing a bow. There was clearly no bow in his hand, yet an arrow appeared out of thin air, formed exactly from the heaven and earth's spiritual chi. He activated the Eye of Truth and swept a glance at Yan Tianzhao's weak point. Shoo! A chilling flash shot out, ridiculously fast. Ah! Yan Tianzhao screamed miserably. His left rib was struck. Green blood splattered, looking extremely strange. The left rib was his vulnerable spot, and it had been pierced through by the arrow formed of spiritual chi. In an instant, the origin power in his body poured out, and his figure staggered, sliding down from the sky. Ling Han pursued with sword in hand, and as Yan Tianzhao fell, he unleashed another Mysterious 3000. Fear flickered in Yan Tianzhao's eyes. At this moment, he truly felt death closing in. He did not want to die, for he had acquired a god's memory and had a 90% grasp of becoming a god in the future. Moreover, he still had not executed many maneuvers, and if he fought a life-and-death battle with Ling Han, it was uncertain who would emerge the victor. But now everything was too late. 1,000 sword lights pierced forth. It was Ling Han's strongest killer move. Yan Tianzhao's vulnerable spot was injured, and as he fell from the sky, he had no way to evade. Driven by survival instinct, he formed seals with his hands and fired out a mass of green nets, interweaving before him, stopping Ling Han as much as possible. Pooh! 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 Sword lights fell like rain, instantly tearing apart the green nets. At least 500 sword lights poured down upon Yan Tianzhao's body. Flesh flew up continuously, turning him into a skeleton. Teng! 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 Yan Tianzhao staggered back as guts and other internal organs slid out. A sword mark also appeared on his head, revealing a deep wound. Everyone shook their heads. Yan Tianzhao's head was already crushed, and he was struggling at death's door. At most, he would die within a few more breaths. Yan Tianzhao stared at Ling Han in shock. His eyes had already fallen out, leaving only 2 black holes, particularly terrifying. He still could not believe that underestimating an enemy, or rather, simply not wanting to fight Ling Han head-on, would actually doom him for eternity. When enemies met face-to-face on a narrow path, the courageous won. He had even forgotten such a simple thing. "Ha ha ha, Ling Han! Now that I'm dead, don't think about getting off easily." He focused his mind and roared. This man received the Jiang family's key and opened Sagittarius Palace, which is related to a god's treasure trove, a hidden treasure even gods would be stirred by. And he also has a treasure tool that can accommodate. Pooh! Ling Han's sword thrust through, thoroughly ending his life. Nevertheless, the seed had been sown. Ling Han's gaze swept past, and he saw countless people looking at him with eyes burning with desire, wishing they could devour him alive. God's treasure trove, translavery. Editor Kurisu. Ling Han's nerve was ironclad. He did not bother to argue, because once treasure was mentioned, countless people would rather believe it was real. What's more, a man's words near death were often taken as sincere, so Yan Tianzhao's statement carried a weight that was hard to shake. His eyes swept the crowd. The moment he spotted Wen Yijian, he lifted a hand and called out, "Junior brother Wen." Pooh! A good number of people sprayed spit in shock. Since when did Ling Han have anything to do with Wen Yijian? How could he be calling him junior brother? Even Wen Yijian himself was briefly startled, and he said, "I do not know why Master Ling addresses me as junior brother. You and I both inherited the legacy of the 12 palaces. Of course, we are fellow brothers." Ling Han threw his head back and laughed. He had to drag Wen Yijian down so the weight on his own shoulders would be shared. He clearly did not fear these Flower Blossom tier warriors, but if spiritual infant tier figures arrived, that would be troublesome to handle. Besides, if word spread, perhaps even shattering Void tier elites would cross regions at any cost. Then, even with the Black Tower's protection, would he hide inside his shell for an entire lifetime? Wen Yijian was from the East region, yet came running to the North region for benefits, so he naturally had to shoulder part of the pressure. Ling Han could not always be the only one bearing the burden, could he? Hehe, Master Ling truly enjoys making jokes. Wen Yijian guffawed, wearing a look as though arguing was beneath him, yet in his heart he thought that if they were really fellow brothers, then he ought to be the senior one. Ling Han gave a cold chuckle and said, "Junior brother Wen obtained the Scorpio Palace's legacy. Do you dare swear a heart's vow and wager that I am wrong?" A heart's vow was sworn upon one's martial principles. If it was false, it would not summon lightning from the heavens. Yet it would severely affect one's martial path and future progress. It absolutely could not be uttered carelessly. Deep in Wen Yijian's eyes, a thread of irritation flashed, but his face remained exceedingly calm as he said blandly, "Why should I make a heart's vow?" "Nonsense." Ling Han said nothing more. He merely swept his gaze over everyone and declared, "Junior brother Wen and I are kings among martial artists, and we have both stepped into the Flower Blossom tier, and with this Flower Blossom tier, King tier puppet as well." He summoned the rock spirit. "If you want it, come and fight. Let's see how many will spill blood across the skies and leave their lives behind right here." The corner of Wen Yijian's mouth twitched. Why did Ling Han drag him in again? Did this man have no ears at all, or did he simply not listen to a word? He was even more shaken. Having gained tremendous benefits in the Scorpio Palace, he had finally broken into the Flower Blossom tier, and he had also obtained a mystic art that could conceal his cultivation, so it still appeared as the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. So how did Ling Han see through it with a single glance? What kind of mystic art was this in the end? "Don't bother with so much. Capture the two of them." The Flower Blossom tier cultivators exchanged glances and reached a decision. Whether it was the legacy of the 12 palaces or the gods' treasure trove, either was of immense importance. They would rather kill by mistake than let it slip away. "Not going to play along with you North Region lunatics." Wen Yijian suddenly shot upward, no longer restraining himself as the aura of the Flower Blossom tier spread without reservation. With one step, divine light flashed, and he burst forth, soaring into the sky to flee. Want to leave? In an instant, dozens of attacks streaked toward him. Even if Wen Yijian's battle prowess was outstanding, he had only just broken through. There was no way he could withstand such a bombardment, and he was forced to drop back down. "Junior brother Wen, let's fight shoulder to shoulder." Ling Han laughed out loud. Wen Yijian was so furious his nose nearly went crooked. He could have slipped away quietly and gotten rich in secret. Yet Ling Han had exposed him instead. Now he was trapped in a perilous situation, and gloom surged within him. "Ling Han, when did I ever offend you? Why must you meddle with me like this?" he asked coldly, not even calling him Master Ling anymore. Ling Han laughed and answered with perfect righteousness, "Junior brother Wen, we are family. At a time like this, of course, we must stand together. Don't worry, I will protect you. Protect your sister. If it were not for you, I could have left calmly, swaggering away." Wen Yijian's face darkened as he realized the scene before him clearly would not unfold as he wished. Fortunately, those spiritual infant tier warriors from earlier had already returned. Otherwise, if those elites interfered, he would have no choice but to submit. Now, however, he could fight it out and force a path through this tight encirclement. "Ling Han, I will definitely make you pay for this debt," he swore as he moved to stand with Ling Han. Together with the rock spirit, the two formed a corner, backs pressed together. "Ha! That is for the future," Ling Han replied, utterly unconcerned. Liu Yutong and the others were sensible and did not step forward. If they rushed in now, not only would they be unable to help Ling Han, they would instead become burdens, leaving them with an unpleasant knot in their hearts. Their cultivation had advanced quickly, and they had even fought their way onto the North Region's prodigy roll. Yet they still could not share Ling Han's worries and burdens. Come. Whoever wants the treasure, just attack." Ling Han laughed loudly. "But think it through. I am also a heaven-grade alchemist. If you harm even a single hair on my head, you'd better beware, lest the entire alchemist society makes life hard for all of you." The faces of all the Flower Blossom tier elites twitched. They felt Ling Han was both astonishingly bold and, at the same time, a little too rascally. Facing the crowd alone, this was clearly astonishing courage. Yet he also threw out his identity as a heaven-grade alchemist to threaten them, forcing them to hold back in their attacks. Wasn't that exceedingly rascally? This was not the least bit like an 18-year-old youth. Instead, he was seasoned and slick, like an old fox that had wandered the world for ages. Take them down. Do your best not to hurt them. The Flower Blossom tier warriors reached a consensus. The weight of a heaven-grade alchemist was simply too great. Killing one in secret might be acceptable, but killing Ling Han in public, that would surely shake the whole world. Whoever struck the fatal blow would definitely be pushed out by their sect as a scapegoat to quell the fury of the world's alchemists. So what? If I don't even obtain the treasure, yet still have to give up my life for it, who would do such a thing? Thus, everyone secretly hoped someone else would accidentally kill Ling Han, but they themselves absolutely would not do it. Go! More than 20 Flower Blossom tier cultivators attacked in unison, their momentum vast and mighty. Ling Han, Wen Yijian, and the Rock Spirit all roared, blades swinging and fists driving forward, charging one after another. Watching from the side, Hu Nu stamped her feet, yet the battle had already become a chaotic melee. Any random gust within it carried Flower Blossom tier force, and the entire fray was flooded with such power. No matter how fast she was, it was impossible to completely avoid the residual shockwaves of so many attacks. Charging in head-on would only end with her injured. Her battle instincts were terrifying. She immediately arrived at this conclusion, which was why she did not rush in hot-headedly. "Nu wants to become stronger! Nu wants to become stronger!" the little grill shouted at the top of her lungs. Something within her seemed to awaken, releasing a faint trace of divine might. Mortals could not possibly sense it as it shot toward the heavens, even breaking through this world. Ling Han now possessed the power of the 8th layer of the Flower Blossom tier, and with his former heaven tier divine sense, he could still mobilize the spirit chi of heaven and earth. However, the amount he could allocate was relatively smaller, so his actual cultivation was equivalent only to the 3rd layer of the Flower Blossom tier. With the various arts he had mastered added on, his battle prowess skyrocketed to 10 stars, surpassing 7 stars. This was mainly because his power had been forcibly elevated. Otherwise, if he had truly stepped into the Flower Blossom tier, then even at the 1st layer of the Flower Blossom tier, his battle prowess could still reach 10 stars. But even now, it was enough. Among his enemies, 9 had only just completed their breakthroughs. Figures like Yukun Lun, Bai He Shun, and other old names from the Prodigy role. How many stars of battle prowess could they possibly have at this very moment? Besides, Ao Feng and other even older figures of the Prodigy role had also broken through not long ago, about 1 or 2 years, and at most 10 years ago. Yet in 10 years, what layer of the Flower Blossom tier could they have reached? Back when they fought the Golden Blood demonic ape, there were also more than 20 Flower Blossom tier warriors, even ones at the 9th layer. Yet weren't they still smashed and knocked about in all directions?